you who like to geek out on space and science, this is your Griffin great. And it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, so we have some folks joining the Zoom now, and we'll continue to do so for the next minute. And we'll hang on just a minute to let anybody who wishes to join us. While that's happening, I will introduce myself. My name is Adrienne Finley Odell, and I have the great honor to serve as the head of school of Royce Moore School in Evanston, Illinois, now in its 105th year. And right back here on my desk, you'll see the Griffin, along with just above it on the bookshelf there, all the Griffins since 1919. That first one on my desk is the very first one, published in 1919. And if you go back a few years, you would see Terry in those Griffins, who is joining us tonight. Welcome, Terry.
Hello.
So glad to have you join us. I want to do a proper introduction of you. So if you will allow me the honor, I would like to share your bio so that everybody knows a little bit about you, and then we'll have a great conversation. So Dr. Terry Gdoutos studies and develops novel technologies for deployable solar arrays, antennas, and integrated sunlight collection and power beaming arrays, enabling spacecraft to collect solar energy in space and wirelessly beam it to Earth, the moon, or other planets. He is currently leading a multi-disciplinary team of research scientists, engineers, and graduate students on the design, procurement, fabrication, and integration and testing activities for the development of DOLCE, an on-orbit 50-kilogram technology demonstration of an ultralight deployable structure and deployment mechanism for space-based power stations in Caltech's Space Solar Power Project. Previously, Dr. Gdoutos, along with a multidisciplinary team of postdocs and graduate students, demonstrated the lightest by a factor of 10 experimentally validated prototype integrating solar power collection and wireless transmission. Dr. Gdoutos' expertise includes the analysis, design, construction, and testing of deployable structures with ultralight carbon fiber reinforced plastic, CFRP, components. Dr. Gdoutos also has experience in failure analysis and lifetime assessment of complex thermomechanical systems in rail, mining, and chemical processing. He completed his Ph.D. in Aeronautics at Caltech in 2013 and holds a Bachelor of Science degrees from Northwestern University in Mechanical Engineering and Computer Science. And of course, a high school diploma from Royce Moore School. We are so proud and delighted to welcome you, Terry, to our Griffin Great.
It's great to be here.
Terrific.
Thank you for the introduction.
Yeah. So to get things started, I want to just mention the very first time I met Terry, or was introduced to Terry. I wanted to read something, so I picked that up off the floor. It fell down. Was my very first, second month on the job, second full month on the job as head of school. And we were just launching a brand new program in our middle school called P3, or Personal Passion Projects. And it's to serve as a precursor to the January short term in the high school. And so we put out a Google form to all of our alumni looking for mentors, because a big part of this program is to have mentors who have expertise in various areas who can work with our middle school students to guide them. So I just wanted to get a sense, like, who are our alumni and are they interested in volunteering? So I put out this form, and that same day, right before I went to bed, I thought, I wonder if anybody responded to that form. And so I pulled it up and went through 1, 2, Number 3, the third response was from Terry. And in the answer to, please describe your area of expertise, particularly the area in which you may be able to mentor young learners, he wrote, aerospace engineering, currently designing a spacecraft to collect solar power in space and deliver it wirelessly to any location on Earth. And I was like, what? Oh my gosh, this is one of our alumni. I completely geeked out. I could hardly sleep, and I couldn't wait till, I could talk to him and find out more, because I'm so fascinated. And I think everybody here tonight will too. So Terry, again, thank you for joining us. As you can see, I'm still a little starstruck by what you do. It's just so amazing. Let's kind of go back a little bit. This is the question I think I asked you, the very first question when we spoke. How in the world does one become an aerospace engineer doing what you're doing? It's just fascinating.
Well, I mean, so my experience was that let's see. So I mean, obviously, I graduated from Royce-Moore. I went into mechanical engineering and computer science because I couldn't decide which one of the two I wanted to choose between. So it was just kind of a general broad engineering knowledge at Northwestern. And then, after that, I decided that I was going to do a Ph.D. And again, it was one of those things where I didn't really know what I wanted to do my Ph.D. in. So I actually applied to a different discipline for each university that I actually applied. And so at Caltech, I applied to aerospace. And then for example, at Stanford, I applied to like material science and so on. Anyway, from the places that I got into, Caltech sounded the coolest, and aerospace engineering sounded, fun and exciting and kind of a new thing, which I had never like really studied before because Northwestern didn't have, a dedicated aerospace engineering program. Anyway, I came to Caltech, did a PhD in aerospace, learned some fundamentals, and then left aerospace completely. And went into a great company which does engineering consulting and failure analysis called Exponent, and that's where I did a lot of the projects that you mentioned in my introduction in rail and mining and food processing was another one. Very interesting stuff, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so fast forwarding a bit, I happened to be walking at Caltech's campus for a completely unrelated reason, a couple of years after that first job. And I ran into an old professor of mine who said, hey, Terry, I've been thinking about you, we have this project, you might be interested in it. I said, okay, well, what is this project, right? And he said, well, we're designing these spacecraft that collect solar power in space and beam it to Earth. Now, I had never heard of this concept before, right? I mean,
right.
And so it sounded like science fiction.
It sort of is, but
so
not
okay,
anymore.
Interesting tangent, right? It started out as a science fiction story.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was like, wow, like, okay. So I Googled it. I went home, right? I Googled. Of
course, that's what everybody does, right? Let's find out about this.
And saw that it's actually real. And Caltech had already published a few papers in the area at the time, and I was like, wow, like, not only is this real, it's feasible and extremely impactful, right? So I was one of the things that I was looking for at the time and still am, and kind of I guess always am, is some sort of like an impact that I can feel in my work, and the impact of such a project, at the time I thought would be tremendous. So then I had a second conversation right? And then we had lunch, and then all of a sudden, I accepted the job.
Of course, there had to be the lunch, right?
Right? Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah,
lunch.
yeah. Yeah. So that's how it happened, and you know, interestingly, I hadn't had specific aerospace work experience prior to this, right? So I relied heavily on general engineering background. I mean, obviously I had done a PhD in aerospace, so that helped. I knew the language.
Right, right.
But yeah, I mean that's how I ended up as working on this.
Yeah, it's incredible. Is there anything that you can think back to when you were a student at Royce-Moore that you can say, oh, I can see how kind of this might have led to this, might have led to this?
Yeah, I think it all started with well, really, and this is why I mentioned doing computer science and mechanical engineering at Northwestern. It all started with a JST at Royce-Moore. I forget which year it was. It might have been junior year or senior year, where I chose to do a project of learning or installing or doing something with Linux and programming Linux on a computer, an old computer that Royce-Moore had at the time, and basically understanding how computers work and something like that. And from that project, I was like, wow, like, computers are very interesting in the way in which we program them. I mean, I was basically completely fascinated by theoretical computer science. And wanting to study that, and then in parallel, studying mechanical engineering, I think really basically solidified the sort of perspective in me that, there's just a relative versatility, right? That even though, there's different disciplines, they're all very much related. Like I saw the common threads between them. In a sense, just opened my eyes, and I've kind of stayed true to that thread since. Because prior to that, like JST, I didn't really have much computer science experience. It always sounded cool, but yeah. So were it not for that, I don't know. Maybe I'd be working in rail as a mechanical engineer.
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
Well, that's really cool. And the fact that you had that freedom to design, your own January short term, it is such a gift for a young person to, have this freedom to kind of create something for themselves. So if you did that your junior year, do you recall what you did your senior year?
So let's see. I think I remember all of my JSTs. I can't put them in order, but one of them was film. Yeah. So we watched. This was led by Mr. Hunt, and we watched a number of old movies. Metropolis was in there. Chinatown was in there, and then we wrote analyses of these movies. Very interesting. And then I remember we also had like, the analysis was based on how a film critic views films, right? So there was some basis there for how to do this.
Okay.
So that was one. The other one that I remember very vividly was every morning at 8 a.m., 8:30 a.m. We went to a gym and like worked out for, I don't know, 6 hours or something every day. It was a gym, I forget which gym it was, but it was in Evanston, obviously. And that was fantastic. Like I remember, this was very measurable results, right? Like at the beginning,
I'm sure.
I did like, I was able to do, I don't know, 15 push-ups or something. And by the end of it, I was all the way up to like 80, right? So that was solid.
That's great progress.
And then there was computer science.
Right.
And what was the last one? The last one was a sort of business plan idea, right? I forget what specific like, it was choose a company and write a business plan about it. I forget what company I chose.
Hmm.
But that's what I did.
Cool. And for each one, you had kind of different, really different experiences, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that one for sure kind of set you on a path that
Yeah, I mean,
you're
the
still
computer
enjoying today.
science one, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, also I think because it certainly came later, either junior year or senior year, I forget.
Right. Right.
Um,
So I was I was interested in your bio. It talks a couple of different times about the multidisciplinary team and approach. And I'd love to hear more about the different disciplines that are brought in and how that team was assembled, and any reflection you might have on the power of kind of those different lenses for your work or for other works.
yeah, no, that's I think that's a very key concept, is the interdisciplinary nature of teams. So the way that it was assembled was very organic in a sense, because if you go back to doing space solar power, so collecting solar power in space and wirelessly beaming it to a particular location, it's been attempted to be done since the 1960s, and it hasn't been successful yet.
Mm-hmm.
And
Wow.
so, the question is why hasn't it been successful? And instead of answering that, I'll answer why we think we can be successful.
Okay.
And that is, we believe we can be successful because we are addressing each one of the challenges of this problem as its own discipline and from a fundamental science standpoint.
Hmm.
So we've identified that there's really three fundamental challenges to this problem. And when I say we, I mean the Caltech professors who studied this, long before I joined the effort. And what these problems are is there's one that is specific to solar panels or photovoltaics. So how do we make lighter, flexible, more efficient photovoltaics? Now, that's not specific to space solar power. That's a general, applied physics, material science problem. Then there's the question of how do we beam power most efficiently? And again, that's not a problem specific to space solar power. It's another fundamental electronics and physics question. And then there's the third area, which is how do we get things to space in the lightest, most efficient way possible? And again, it's not specific to space solar power, right? It's a structural engineering type question.
Mm-hmm.
And so the team formed very organically, with people in each of those disciplines, right? Applied physicists, mechanical engineers, structural engineers, electrical engineers, material scientists. And so, each one, of the teams in those disciplines focusing on a specific problem, but all, with the same focus of integrating those solutions for a common purpose.
Okay.
Now, that effort of approaching, the three technologies or those three key problems independently, at times also requires, integration points, right? And one of the integration points is the space demonstration that we plan on doing later this year, or end of this year, I should say. And when you get to those integration points, now you have to bring in a third element, which is, engineering design of a particular spacecraft that actually combines all of this, and so on. And now that's another discipline in itself. And so, all of the teams are just combining these different areas, and I think that is absolutely key to doing something brand new and achieving, results that are not a sort of simple step progression, but a much larger, sort of revolutionary change.
Cool. All right. So you just said something kind of just nonchalant in the middle of all of that, which is, later this year, some demonstration, something. And
Right.
I think let's go back to that because this
Sure.
is super exciting. And, I know that, you are pretty charged up about this. And when I heard about it, I was like, that is incredible. So will you share with everybody what is going to happen in December?
Yeah. So, we're aiming to launch to space a demonstration. Actually, there's a mission to launch 3 different demonstrations to space. Each of those demonstrating the 3 disciplines that I alluded to earlier. One being deployable structures, which have to do with how do we get things to space most efficiently. The second being new kinds of photovoltaics, and the third being power beaming. So we're right now in the process of integrating, or I should say, fabricating and integrating a payload. A payload is a thing that goes to space. I actually don't remember. I didn't remember that terminology back from my aerospace classes. So anyway, so we're making a payload to demonstrate each of those technologies, and we're aiming to launch it at the end of this year.
And you actually have an agreement, a contract or something like that?
So yes. I mean, this is all, very much progressing. It's very real. We have, the planned launch vehicle is a Falcon 9 by SpaceX. Right now we're involved in, so before you can put something on a launch vehicle, right, there's a number of milestones that you have to hit. So right now we're in that process of, showing that what we're building, meets those criteria.
So exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's,
and what are your days like? Is it absolutely insane right now to get ready for that?
So it is. It is. So most of my days take place where I am right now, which is in this lab.
So where are we?
So we are in the space structures lab at Caltech.
Okay.
This is where we're building the payload that I talked about earlier. So most of the days, I mean, as you said, are extremely, I don't know if hectic is the word, dynamic is I think the word, because a lot of things are changing. And it's sort of a big part of what I'm doing is trying to evaluate, which changes or what new input requires immediate response versus what, we can think about later, and what other inputs we can completely ignore, and all that, while we're building flight hardware that will go to space, which of course, anytime you build hardware, there's challenges, there's unexpected things that come up, and so on, and all that, also kind of in the middle of the whole pandemic, which imposes its own restrictions on space usage and things like that.
Right.
Yeah, so days are exciting.
So I mean, let me ask you, how many people are on this team that you're working with on a daily basis?
So on a daily basis, it is there's 6 of us.
Mm-hmm.
And then on a sort of larger scale, there's about 30 people on this project. Not all of them working towards the specific milestone that right now we're focused on.
Okay.
Yeah, so about 6 of us on a daily basis, building hardware, mechanical and electrical. So those are different people. Designing hardware, again, that's a different discipline. Testing.
And what is your role, Terry, with the team?
Oh man, like everything, I guess. So mostly planning, coordinating, reviewing, which sounds, organized, right? Like you make a plan and then, you see that it happens and then you review it, right? But of course, nothing goes according to plan. And so it's partly that, and then it's partly being in the lab and just looking at everything going on and bringing input into everything that's going on and doing, whatever needs to be done that can't be done by everybody else, doing it myself.
Okay.
So a little bit of everything, and making sure that it all happens.
That it all happens. Yeah. So you're the director, making sure everything's coming together and staying on time.
And time and not so much. And budget.
And
Although,
budget, yeah. And where is the budget coming for all of this?
So this is all coming from a program internal to Caltech that is funded by an anonymous source for the specific purpose of this particular project.
And what can you give us a sense of what kind of budget it takes to do this project to get to the point where you can put it on Falcon 9?
Yeah. So all I'll say about that is this, right? So there's a team of 10 full-time people on it. There's hardware that you got to build, and then there's launch costs and so on. I don't want to go into too much of the financials because a lot of those are covered by NDAs. For example, one of the things we'll find is that, like, if you go and try to sign a contract with a launch provider, the price is protected, which is interesting.
That is interesting.
But a lot of it is public. So a lot of the baseline, prices are just public. You can go find them.
Okay. Right. So can we have a look around? I mean, you're in the lab there. Can we have a look? Like, show us what you're working on. We'd love to see what you're doing.
So let's see. I talked about a spacecraft or a payload, I should say, that is meant to demonstrate, better or lighter, more efficient ways to get to space. And that largely is this. I'll show you the actual thing. Let's see if we can, there we go. So for a sense of scale, let's see, what can maybe I can stand next to it and I can get a sense of scale, how big that is.
So what is it, like 2 feet tall, something like that? Three, I don't know.
Yeah, it's about, let's see, okay, so in feet, 3 feet.
Okay.
2.5 in feet.
Okay.
Usually we work in meters and
of course
I have to do the conversions. So that's one thing that we're building.
And that piece does what?
Okay, so that piece, you see here, it deploys. It's a mechanism that deploys a structure that you see here. Let's see, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so that structure fits inside the piece that I showed earlier. And when it gets to space, it's deployed by that mechanism. And basically the way that mechanism functions is that it ensures that structure is packaged tightly inside that, this small volume, and is then able to deploy safely to a much larger volume, as you can see of the, with the structure on the wall there.
Mm-hmm.
So I can show you a video of how this actually works.
Yeah, that would be terrific.
Let me let's see if I can share this. So if you can see this, what you're looking at from the top is that mechanism that I was just talking about, right? That you saw on the table. And inside of it is the structure that I just showed you, that's right now hanging on that wall. And I'll just play this video, and you kind of get a sense of how it is that it deploys. So the first part was in high speed, and this is in slow motion.
Amazing. What is the material, the gold material?
So this gold is Kapton, which is a polymer, and it's acting right now as a representative surrogate for the material that for the photovoltaics or antennas that the structure would be deploying, you know, in its ultimate functional form.
Okay. Wow, that had to be so exciting just to see, you know, step by step it coming together.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the first time that, well, you know, the first, yeah, I'm going to stop sharing and I'll show you what one of the first sort of exciting moments was in this project. And it was when we could build something like this. So this is a frame composed of carbon fiber elements.
Mm.
And one of the first key milestones was being able to build one of these and show that it can do something like this, right? Where we'll fold it, and then it'll snap right back to its original shape without any damage.
Mm.
So just being able to build these types of components was huge. And of course, the first time that we assembled them into the type of structure that you saw earlier was another huge step. And then the first deployment, and now we're at like the 30th deployment. So these have become routine. And now what we're doing is ensuring that we can deploy this structure. You know, do the video that you just saw basically after. The mechanism and with the structure inside of it have gone through, you know, a sort of really intense vibration that's meant to represent the rocket loads.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure nothing breaks in that.
Right, yeah. That's got to be quite a process to go through.
Yeah. So that's, yeah. I mean, this is the last 2 weeks has been just really vibration tests.
Amazing. So fast forward, we're at December. The deployment mechanism is attached to the Falcon 9 rocket. What if this is to be called a success? What does success look like for the project?
Well, everything is launched, right? The payload is launched. It goes to, you know, some kind of low Earth orbit, orbits around the Earth, and does the exact same demonstration that you saw in this video in space, which is also there captured by video, which is sent back to Earth. And you know, we look at these results, and you know, everything looks nominal as we expect it, meaning that the structure is deployed, nothing is broken, and there's also some scientific objectives where we'd like to measure the shape of the deployed structure once it's been deployed, and see if that's what we expect it is, and measure how that shape changes as the payload travels through the sun and out of the sun, so how it changes with the temperature and so on. But yeah, I think getting it all there and doing a successful deployment, that's, you know, I'd be happy.
And then what would be next? You have a successful deployment, then what happens?
Well, I think the next step, I mean, remember, this is just one milestone, right?
Right.
So the next step would be to start looking more closely at how we integrate, you know, this deployable with the new types of photovoltaics and power beaming antennas that are being developed, and that will also hopefully be demonstrated as part of the same mission. I didn't really talk about those as much. In the same mission that we're talking about, we also hope to demonstrate, you know, new kinds of photovoltaics, as well as power beaming in space with flexible electronics. So the next step after that being successful would be to start looking at integrating all of those into a single unit that can then, you know, go to space and collect power and beam it eventually.
And what is the vision? What is the vision for how this would be used?
Yeah, so there's a number of areas. The sort of generic way to look at it is that, you know, you have a power station in space, and it beams power to a particular location on Earth, and that power is better than solar power in a sense, because it's not dependent on time or day.
Okay.
Or weather.
And
of course, it's unlimited because it comes from the sun.
Right.
And so now you can look at various locations on Earth that, you know, would have a need for that. So that's one sort of way to look at it. The other way to look at it is that this enables powering missions to deep space. The same technologies enabling powering missions that go to deep space, or delivering power, for example, to places like the moon or you know, Mars, conceivably, or other planets. So again, you know, not having to go bypassing some of the limitations that come from installing solar panels.
Well, it is so exciting thinking about the potential. The potential is incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible. Wow.
It's a you know, the vision's been around for 50 years.
Yeah.
It's challenging, but you know, the reward is huge.
And what are some of the competing technologies for this kind of vision?
Yeah, I think that probably the most direct competitor to space solar power is probably just, you know, photovoltaics on the ground, or other types of alternative energy, right? I mean, you know, if you start looking at, let's talk for a second about Earth, right? If you look at the energy market on Earth, it's a very mature market, right? I mean, there's you know, huge diversification of energy sources, everything from solar, wind, you know, your renewables. There's you know, some of the fossil fuels, and so to get into that, you know, to identify a niche where a new technology, especially one that involves, you know, a high degree of risk and space and sort of more exotic things like that. I mean, there's a lot of competition, right? It really depends on what one cares about. If it's just economics, if it's just, you know, cheapest energy available, that's a different problem than, for example, a case where there's this really, remote place on Earth that, I can't get power to, and right now, for example, the way that I'm powering it might be, I have to somehow get oil or natural gas there, and that can be expensive and dangerous and so on. And I don't need power there for forever. There's a case where I can direct a satellite to say, hey, deliver some power there at this time. So it depends.
Yeah. Okay. Could the technology deliver power to moving targets?
Yeah. Yeah. Conceivably. Yeah. Absolutely.
So I'm thinking about, ships out at sea.
Right. There's a lot of these cases where this makes sense. So one of the key areas that the Caltech team wants to demonstrate as part of power beaming is power steering. All right, so how you steer the beam.
That's super exciting. Of course, everybody's gotten geeked out in the last week or so because of the Mars mission.
Yeah.
So if Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos had their wish, we'll be colonizing Mars, and maybe your technology will provide the power for that to happen in the future.
Yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah. So this is an incredibly intense long-term project. How do you keep up the energy and enthusiasm every day when you're working on kind of the same thing or parts of the same thing every day?
Yeah, I think that at least the key that I found to this is that really each day is a unique day and it's got its own specific goals, right? Yes, they're all part of this overall vision, but the problems that are being solved in any one day are actually very different from each other. So just a very simple example, right?
Yeah.
We want to, I mentioned this vibration testing, right? So we take the mechanism that you saw that's right now sitting behind me, and we put it on a table. This table shakes it really hard. Okay, so we've been doing this. Well, one of the problems that happens is, well, the shake table stops working, right? Now that's a very different and specific problem that, in a sense, you could say, oh, well, this is just an annoyance. True. But again, it requires, its own however many hours of troubleshooting and so on. So I think approaching each day with kind of an open mind about what are the problems that I'm going to face today and solving those, at least that's what helps me, stay excited.
Okay, that is a tweetable tweet. So that is so true, regardless of what you're doing in your career or if you're a student, right? Thinking about each day in these kind of day tight compartments about what problems you want to solve.
Yeah, and each one of them has its own sort of unique problem that deserves your full attention.
Yeah.
And solving it, the best way I can.
Oh, so much fun. We have about 15 minutes left, and I know that there are questions. In fact, there's one question already that's been posted in the chat, in the Q&A.
Sure.
From one of our parents, Brianna Silver. Hi, Brianna. And the question is, she's really enjoying the conversation. Thank you. How long does it take to transfer the power between the orbit and Earth?
Right. So great question there. So the power is transferred obviously at the speed of light, so it's very fast. So in that sense, it's almost instantaneous, right? I mean, we're going from an orbit that is, if it's low Earth orbit, 400 kilometers, something all the way up to like, I don't know, 40,000 kilometers if it's a higher orbit. So we're going from something like that to Earth at the speed of light. That part is pretty instantaneous, or very fast, much less than a second. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is, okay, you get the power. What do you have to do to it before you can transfer it, right? And that part could take time. Now, one of the sort of key components of the approach with which we're solving this problem is that part is instantaneous for us as well, or instantaneous, I guess, within the limits of, we take the power, very quickly process it. We don't store it, right? We don't have batteries that need to store it so that we can do more processing and so on. It's just a pass through.
Okay.
So more or less instantaneous.
Awesome. Love that. All right. So
yeah,
we have another question. Oh, go ahead.
A lot of the older concepts, have a component of storage to them.
Right.
Which also adds a benefit, right? Which is that, now you have stored power that you can use. Although one of the problems with that is that batteries are heavy, and launching things to space is limited by weight usually.
Got it. We have another question. This is from Karina, who is a third grader. And I think Sarah is asking, does Karina want to come on screen and ask her question? I'll give her a second to respond. Oh, yes, okay, here she comes. There she is. Hi, Karina.
Hi.
Hello.
What's your question?
So what's your favorite part about being a rocket scientist?
Yeah. I think what's really cool about space is that, I'm not there, right? Like most of the places on Earth, you can kind of imagine, or, you can think about like what they feel like, what they're like, and so on. And about space, I can't, right? Nobody has really experienced the real conditions of space, which, go from extremely hot to extremely cold. I mean, even the astronauts that were on the moon, right? They wear suits and so on. So you don't have that feel for it, right? Like, if it's 70 degrees outside on, here on Earth, you kind of know what that feels like, right? And if it's like, I don't know, 30 degrees, you kind of know what it feels like. And so the conditions of space, one of the things I love about it is that I don't have that feel for it. And yet, we can design things to survive those conditions. I think that's really cool.
Thank you.
Thanks for your question.
Yeah, thanks, Karina. We have another question posted in the chat. This is from fellow alum Scott Pearlstein. Hi, Scott. And he wrote, this may seem like a silly question. The Big Bang Theory brought a lot of attention on science and geek culture centered around scientists at Caltech.
Yeah.
Do people ask you if Caltech is like the Big Bang Theory and express interest in the work taking place there?
So yes, and on top of that, they also ask me, is Caltech the same as that school that's featured in the Big Bang Theory? And also inquire about a whole other number of schools in Southern California, such as Cal Poly, and so on, that all have kind of similar names. So the answer is yes, always.
Super fun.
and I have the answer to that question, which is yes, it's the same school. Yes, it's super cool. Yeah.
All right, Terry, here's a note from a former classmate of yours, Chris Charlson.
Cool.
So Chris says, hey, Terry, great to see you are doing well. I believe we played soccer together while at Roycemore. Anyways, I just switched careers and am now working for Lockheed Martin Space. So this is super interesting. I was curious, what are the dangers of beaming light down to Earth?
Right. Yeah. So this is a this is a question that we get a lot. And so I think one of the, going into like a little bit more detail now, we take the light and we take this, well, first of all, we take sunlight through solar, photovoltaics, we convert that into DC power, direct current power. And then we take that power and we convert it into microwave power at a radio frequency of about 10 gigahertz. So at 10 gigahertz, and for the power densities that we're talking about, this is quite benign. So there's actually no effect. I mean, it's not even enough to raise the temperature of the object that it's hitting. And this has to do with how wide the beam really is. I mean, you're taking a certain amount of energy and you're dispersing it quite a lot. So it's not focused. This is not a narrow beam that we're talking about that has, quite a bit of power for the area of the beam. So the short answer is, this is not, at least based on where we are right now with calculations of the intensity of this power, it's not high enough to cause concern. When this gets closer to reality, I think we're gonna have to like revisit that and demonstrate that in with more than what I just said. But it's not something that keeps me awake at night.
Great question. And Chris says, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
You guys are going to have to connect for sure.
I completely agree. Completely agree.
All right. Well, Chris, make sure we have well, I guess we do have your information if you got the notice about this happening. So we'll make sure you and Terry get connected. Next question is from a name that might be familiar, Beth Negranita.
Great, very familiar, of course.
She says, thank you, Terry, for the fascinating conversation. In your work at Caltech, does your work at Caltech involve any work with students, either teaching, supervising graduate research, or academic advising?
Yeah, so I would say that about half the team is grad students. So I directly work with grad students on the project side, not as part of their research thesis and so on. And then I also work with undergrads, who want to do research and they hear about this project and they think it's super cool, so they want to join. So yes, the short answer is yes. Grad students, undergrads. Yeah, we haven't had anybody from younger than undergrad.
Okay, terrific. So thinking about that younger than undergrad theme and thread, I know we have some students that are Zooming in tonight or watching on Facebook. If they're fascinated by this and are interested in pursuing anything like this, what advice would you give to them while they're still in high school to, begin to either prepare themselves for further exploration in college or to actually do some exploration while they're still in high school?
Yeah, I think, I've thought a lot about this for myself, even like, how did I end up here, right? And what was it? I think I have kind of two things to say that are independent of each other. The first is on the importance of just focusing on all disciplines, right? So if you think you want to be an engineer, great, but do really well in English, right? Art, music. And the reason I say that is because I really, really think that all of these things come together, and then you're able to combine different fields in whatever you do. That's number one. The second is, if you're fascinated by by engineering or by aerospace or space or things like that, well, do really well in math and and all of these technical disciplines and physics, and then go study it, right? And you know, kind of consistent with the theme of everything so far. Do anything, right? Anything that has to do with engineering, right? Like, you know, it doesn't have to be space, right? You know, it could be cars, it could be, you know, computers, anything, you know, that involves exploring the world and building. You know, that basically allowed me to kind of hone these tools and hone like a way of thinking that then is applicable to solving all kinds of engineering problems.
Mm.
So I don't know. Maybe I was a little broad, but
Well, that's terrific though. And you hit on something that, you know, we talk about a lot at Royce Moore these days, which is the focus on skills over content, and problem solving being one of those skills, complex problem solving and critical thinking. You know, you mentioned kind of design and art. There's the creativity is so important. The ability to communicate what you're doing right now, taking really complex subjects and being able to distill that so somebody like me who doesn't have a scientific background can, you know, understand, but you also have the ability to communicate this to fellow engineers and scientists who know that. So those are such critical skills.
yeah, and I think you just reminded me of another one.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, through all of this, the other skill is to also like listen to other people.
Huge.
Yeah, you know, I think if I go back and like think of all of the problems that I've solved completely alone, I don't know, it might be zero. I don't know. Certainly very few that I really have not been inspired, you know, or helped or something by somebody else. And I think honing, you know, all of these other skills, communication and so on, is very helpful in that.
Yeah, terrific. What about knowing your own strengths and who else you need to bring on your team to bolster those areas that are not your strengths?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's huge. I think it's a lifetime pursuit to kind of getting to know yourself, right? And knowing what you're good at and so on. I think it's easy early in one's career because other people do that job for you. So other people kind of know, okay, like this guy is straight out of college. That means that he knows X, Y, Z. Therefore, like I'm going to give him problems that you know I think he can solve or she can solve. But as you kind of progress from that, it becomes extremely important to know what it is that you know and what it is that you need help with. Because you know, at the end of the day, what matters is that challenges are solved, right? Whether I solve it or someone else solves it, it doesn't really matter, right? If I take on a challenge that I can't do, or I can't do within the time, or I can't do as well, that's not a great scenario. So knowing really what it is that you know and knowing where you need help, huge. And I would add very difficult to actually, you know, I find, yeah, it's a pursuit to accurately assess your own strengths and weaknesses.
Well, that is a really powerful statement. And what do we have?
So you, one of the professors and lead principal investigators of this project just entered. Who I haven't seen in a long time.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Well, we probably want to let you go so you can say hello. But before we sign off, Terry, I want to acknowledge you for this incredible work that you're doing to advance energy and science in such powerful ways. And you're a real inspiration to all of us. And I thank you for giving back to your alma mater by being a mentor to students here, and that you were number 3 who volunteered for the P3 mentors. And for those of you who are interested to meet Terry in person, I am very pleased to announce that Terry has been selected as our distinguished alumnus for 2021. And he will be this year's speaker at the 2021 graduation, and will be on campus here, and all the seniors for sure will get a chance to meet him, but hopefully we'll have opportunity to bring him onto campus for other kids too. Particularly, I'd love to get you back in touch with those students who are now high school students that you mentored in that first P3 year. So again, Terry,
Absolutely.
thank you. This was an incredible conversation. I always love chatting with you, and I always leave with my head full of things to think about. So you've given us a lot to think about tonight.
My pleasure.
Okay. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. Another Griffin Great signing out.